Yuki Onna belongs to the class of yokai, or supernatural beings in Japanese folklore. Her name translates to Snow Woman, and she possesses the power to take the lives of those who dare to approach her domain. She appears as a strikingly beautiful woman with long hair, a tall and slender figure, but with pale blue lips. Her pure white skin allows her to blend seamlessly into the snowy landscape, making it easy for her to watch from a distance, while those under her gaze are often oblivious to the impending threat. The legend of Yuki Onna varies and has many differences, but all versions agree that Yuki Onna often appears during winter and rules over snowy regions. As a murderous yokai, her stories have circulated since the 18th century, all describing her cruelty. However, in modern times, she has been portrayed by writers and video game creators as a seductive being, luring handsome men into romantic encounters with her. In the past, Yuki Onna was known to deliberately mislead travelers into her domain, then use her breath to freeze them to death. In other versions, she is depicted as more aggressive, attacking houses, breaking down doors with gusts of wind to kill the inhabitants as they slept. She also resembled a vampire, draining her victims' blood or life force. Interestingly, there are times when Yuki Onna forgives her victims for various reasons. In one story, a young man became lost and was about to be killed by her. However, Yuki Onna was surprised. The young man was very handsome, and she fell in love with him. After being satisfied with their romantic encounter, Yuki Onna let him go, but only on the condition that he never tell anyone what had happened. The man agreed. Years later, the man married another beautiful woman. They had several children together. However, the man could no longer keep his past a secret and told his wife what had happened. To his great shock, his wife revealed her true identity. She was Yuki Onna in disguise and became furious. The man had broken their agreement, and she prepared to kill him. But Yuki Onna remembered that they still had children. She decided to let her husband live, but only if he promised to take good care of their children. Yuki Onna would return to her original domain and leave them. She warned him that if he ever mistreated their children, she would come back to kill him. After Yuki Onna left, the man became a devoted father and never remarried for the rest of his life. According to a writer named Koizumi Yakumo, the unfortunate man was named Minokichi, and he worked as a woodcutter. In the past, his father, Mosaku, had been killed by the Yuki Onna. One winter, while they were out searching for wood, they suddenly got lost and ended up trapped in a snowstorm. Strangely, they found a cabin they had never seen before. Without much thought, they decided to take shelter and spend the night there. In the middle of the night, Mosaku woke up and saw a beautiful woman dressed in white staring at them. Before he could ask anything, the woman blew her extremely cold breath towards Mosaku, causing him to die from the cold. After killing Mosaku, she approached Minokichi, who was sleeping, to do the same. However, she was surprised to find that Minokichi was a very handsome young man. The beautiful woman, who was the Yuki Onna, decided not to kill him and instead fell in love with him, as previously mentioned. The story of a person falling in love with a supernatural being or ghost also appears in another ghost tale known as Boten Doro, or the Peony Lantern. This story is one of the most frequently adapted ghost tales in kabuki performances. Botan Doro is believed to have originated in the 17th century, when Japanese writers often used supernatural beings or ghosts as subjects in their stories. These ghost stories are generally referred to as kaidan. Similar to the myths associated with Yotsuya Kaidan, which often lead to accidents for its actors, Botan Doro Kaidan has a similar reputation. Records indicate that in a 1919 kabuki performance, 2 actresses playing Otsuyu and her maid fell ill and died within a week. So, how terrifying is the story of Botan Doro? One dark night, a samurai named Ogiwara saw a beautiful and graceful woman walking the streets of Edo with a puny lantern. The woman, named Otsuyu, was accompanied by a maid. For Ogiwara, it was love at first sight. He approached her and joined her for the evening. They talked, joked, and enjoyed each other's company. From that first meeting, Ogiwara fell in love with Otsuyu and was determined to have a lasting relationship with her. One night, Otsuyu's maid was not with her, so she was alone with Ogiwara. He took Otsuyu to his bedroom, and the cold night turned warm for them both. An old neighbor, who was used to seeing Ogiwara alone, became suspicious of the noises coming from his house. When the neighbor peeked in, he was shocked to see Ogiwara sleeping with a human skeleton. The neighbor quickly told a Buddhist monk about what he had seen. The next day, the monk visited Ogiwara and told him that he was under the influence of a seductive ghost. Ogiwara didn't believe the monk and became angry, driving him out of his house. Before leaving, the monk secretly placed a protective spell on Ogiwara's home. The next night, Ogiwara heard Otsuyu and her maid walking in front of his house. Excited, he went outside to greet them, but he was shocked to see that Otsuyu and her maid appeared as living skeletons. Ogiwara was very frightened. On the other hand, Otsuyu couldn't enter Ogiwara's house because the monk had placed a protective spell over it. The next morning, Ogiwara hurried to the monk for an explanation. The monk revealed that Otsuyu and her maid were actually dead and buried. He gave Ogiwara the location of their graves if he still didn't believe him. Ogiwara went to the temple to see for himself and was heartbroken to find Otsuyu's grave. He cried continuously. Suddenly, Otsuyu appeared next to the grave, reminding him of his promise to have a lasting relationship with her. After that day, Ogiwara was never seen by his neighbors again. Months later, following the monk's advice, the neighbors opened Otsuyu's grave. Inside, they found Otsuyu's skeleton tightly embraced by Ogiwara's skeleton. Hachishaku-sama, also known as Hasaku-sama, is a mythical figure classified as a supernatural creature or yokai in Japanese mythology. This entity is depicted as a female ghost standing at around 8 feet tall, or approximately 2.4 meters. She is described as having long black hair and typically wears a hat, a white dress, and white high heels. Although her appearance is often described as attractive, with many portraying her as a beautiful woman, there is a sinister side to her beauty. Some descriptions mention that her face appears lifeless, with an eerie, unsettling smile. So who does this ghost target? Hachishaku-sama has the ability to shapeshift, allowing her to deceive humans into believing she is one of them. This makes it easier for Hachishaku-sama to approach her victims. The exact time when Hachishaku-sama first appeared is unclear, but her popularity surged in August 2008 due to a web post in Japan. An anonymous user claimed to have encountered this supernatural being in 1998 while staying at their grandparents' house. At the time, the user was still a child. The description given closely matches the characteristics of Hachishaku-sama previously mentioned. But the user also stated that on another occasion, Hachishaku-sama was seen wearing a kimono. As the story gained attention, internet users debated and added more information. Some versions claim that Hachishaku-sama preys on children, abducting them before disappearing. In less common stories, Hachishaku-sama is associated with a Japanese curse that says anyone who encounters her will not live much longer. This is the reason why Hachishaku-sama wears all white, as if she is about to attend someone's funeral. There are also claims that Hachishaku-sama is simply a modern fictional creation, as her name does not appear in older Japanese literature. However, this theory is contested by others who point out that in classic Japanese folklore, there are yokai with similar characteristics, though their roles may differ slightly. So, what is the name of the yokai that shares similar characteristics with Hachishaku-sama? Before explaining further, let me first share this intriguing story. In Wakayama Prefecture, there lived a carpenter who was married and had a child. He employed 30 servants to help with his work. One day, his 5-year-old child mysteriously disappeared. Following this, his servants began dying one by one. As the number of servants dwindled, the carpenter found himself unable to continue his work and decided to dismiss them all. The next day, a shaman visited the carpenter's house. The shaman inquired about what had happened because he sensed something unusual in the house. The carpenter replied that nothing special had occurred. The shaman then whispered to him, warning him to be cautious as his life was in danger. After having some food and drink, the shaman left. The carpenter's wife found the shaman's whispered conversation with her husband strange and asked what had been said. The husband replied that the shaman had only asked why their house was so quiet and then left. However, the wife grew suspicious because her husband appeared nervous. The carpenter lied, saying he was anxious because he was ill and wanted to go to bed early. As he lay in bed, a voice instructed him, when your wife goes to the kitchen, you must run to the mountains. Run quickly. Soon after, his wife went to the kitchen. The carpenter immediately fled the house and ran toward the mountains as fast as he could. Hearing her husband's escape, the wife chased after him. In a fit of rage, she tore off her clothing and her body suddenly grew to a height of about 2.1 meters. She laughed menacingly like thunder. As he ran, the carpenter realized that he had married a Taka-ana. She was the one responsible for the disappearance of their child and the deaths of the servants. If the carpenter had not escaped in time, the creature would surely have killed him as well. In Japanese ghost literature means old woman. She is a Japanese yokai popular during the Edo period. She is depicted as a woman with an elongated lower body. Uniquely, in one sketch, she appears beside a brothel. In the book Yokai Garan Zenshu Nihonenjo by Morihiko Fujisawa, Takaona is known for scaring people who are enjoying themselves on the second floor of brothels. This behavior is also mentioned in Tohoku Kaidan no Tabi by Norio Yamada. Takaona, who initially looks like an ordinary human, elongates her body to peek into the same places. Many believe this behavior reflects the state of Japan at that time, where brothels and yukaku, or pleasure districts, were rapidly expanding. In some versions, Takaona is said to have difficulty experiencing pleasure during intimacy. She becomes envious of humans who are able to achieve it. Not only in written works, but Takaona has also been created as a stone statue by a prominent sculptor. It has been displayed at Hidaka Koshioya Ryokuchi Park in Gobo, Wakayama Prefecture, along with 9 other yokai statues since 2009. In 2016, park staff reported to the police that the Takaona stone statue had been vandalized. It was broken, leaving only the base intact. The police later arrested a teenage boy on charges of property damage amounting to 120,000 yen. During the investigation, parts of the Takaona statue were found at the bottom of the harbor, 4.5 meters deep. After being recovered, it was discovered that its right arm was also severely damaged. However, this act of vandalism actually brought renewed attention to the stories associated with Takaona. There are many works of art, both paintings and prints from ancient Japan, that depict the horror of ghosts according to their time. Some of these may already be familiar to us due to their wide popularity on the internet. One of the most famous creators is Katsushika Hokusai, a maestro of Japanese art. He is widely known for his captivating works, especially the series 36 Views of Mount Fuji. Hokusai, who lived during the Edo period, was a versatile artist. Not only did he master the ukiyo-e technique, or woodblock prints, but he was also skilled in painting and sketching. This time, I will showcase some of his works related to ghosts, along with the frightening stories behind them. Our story begins during Japan's Edo period, between 1603 and 1867. At that time, the country's rulers limited contact with the outside world. With little foreign influence, art within Japan's borders flourished, particularly in the woodblock print style known as ukiyo-e. Images were carved onto a piece of wood, inked, and then printed onto paper. This printing method produced some remarkable artists and works of art. However, arguably the master of ukiyo-e was Katsushika Hokusai. It is believed that Hokusai created 30,000 unique works of art, including his famous Hokusai manga, a 15-volume collection of sketches on various topics. As he aged, Hokusai became increasingly fascinated with the supernatural. He spent much of his time creating prints featuring supernatural creatures from folklore, known as yokai. There was a unique activity in Japanese society at the time called Hyakumonogatari Kaidankai. On certain nights, people would gather and sit in a room illuminated by 100 candles. They took turns telling frightening stories related to yokai or ghosts. With each story completed, one candle would be blown out. After the last candle was extinguished, it was said that a spirit would appear. This artwork by Hokusai is related to the ghost of Okiku. The story is often referred to as Bancho Sarayashiki, or the Dish Mansion of Bancho. This Japanese ghost tale involves a broken promise that leads to a tragic fate. All versions of the story revolve around a servant who dies and then haunts the living. According to one of the most common versions, the events take place in Himeji, now part of Hyogo Prefecture. The story tells of a female servant who worked as a dishwasher at Himeji Castle. Okiku was known for her beauty, which attracted one of her lord's retainers, a samurai named Aoyama. Aoyama repeatedly attempted to court the servant, but she constantly rejected him, which made him furious. In retaliation, Aoyama tried to trap her into becoming his lover by hiding one of the 10 valuable plates belonging to their lord. Aoyama then called for the servant and questioned her about the missing valuable plate. Okiku was terrified, as losing one of her lord's prized possessions was a crime punishable by death. She began counting the plates, one by one, but no matter how many times she counted, one plate was still missing. Aoyama offered to help her by making excuses to their lord, but only if she agreed to become his lover. Though afraid of being sentenced to death, Okiku still refused Aoyama's demand. Furious, Aoyama tortured her by repeatedly dunking her into a well. Despite the torture, Okiku refused to comply, so Aoyama eventually killed her with his sword and threw her body into the well. From that moment on, every night, Okiku's spirit emerged from the well and searched for the missing plate inside the castle. She would count the plates from 1 to 9, and then let out a piercing scream that echoed throughout the castle. It was said that anyone who heard her counting would fall gravely ill, and those who heard her reach 9 would die. Eventually, the lord of the castle summoned a priest to pray and calm the restless spirit. Once again, Okiku's ghost emerged from the well and began counting the plates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But before she could scream, the waiting priest shouted, 10! Okiku's spirit was finally at peace, believing the missing plate had been found. From that moment on, she never haunted the castle again. This story is based on real events that occurred around the year 1700 and was only written down in 1803 in the Fukushu Kidan Asaka no Numa, or The Miraculous Tale of Vengeance from Asaka Marsh. According to one version, Koheiji was a third-rate actor in the Morita-za theater group who trained under Master Unagi Taroba. He was known as a poor actor with an unattractive appearance, pale skin, hollow eyes, and disheveled hair. Koheiji often struggled to land significant roles. One day, with the help of his manager, he managed to get a role as a ghost. Koheiji seized this opportunity by studying the faces of the dead, mimicking their movements and practicing his eerie voice. His hard work eventually paid off. His performance was widely praised, and he became known as a talented ghost actor. Koheiji married Otsuka, the widow of Ikushima Hanroku, an actor who was executed for killing Ichikawa Danjuro on stage. Koheiji deeply loved Otsuka, but Otsuka was embarrassed by her new husband and fell in love with Adachi Sakuro, a taiko player from the same theater group. Otsuka asked Sakuro to get rid of Koheiji so they could be together forever. One day, Sakuro invited Koheiji to go fishing in a remote marsh. There, Sakuro hit Koheiji with his fishing rod, causing him to fall into the marsh and drown. Sakuro then fled to his friend Unpei's hideout. Upon arrival, Sakuro was shocked to find Koheiji's wet body already there. Unpei himself did not know how Koheiji's body had appeared in his home. Suddenly, Koheiji's body moved and grasped Sakuro's wrist. Sakuro tried to free himself, but was unsuccessful. Unpei attempted to help by pulling at Koheiji's body, but it was in vain. Finally, Unpei cut off Koheiji's fingers one by one, allowing Sakuro to escape to Edo. In Edo, Sakuro and Otsuka lived together as husband and wife. However, 6 months later, Sakuro began to doubt Otsuka's fidelity after repeatedly seeing other men in their bed. One day, unable to bear it any longer, Sakuro attacked Otsuka with a sword. But the sword was suddenly held by wet fingers. Both Otsuka and Sakuro then heard Koheiji's terrifying laughter. Since that event, Koheiji's ghost continued to haunt them. Sakuro was constantly terrified, and Otsuka frequently fell ill. Otsuka eventually died. After Otsuka's death, Sakuro faced a series of misfortunes. He was often deceived by his own friends, fell into poverty, and eventually became a beggar. Over time, he became emaciated, ill, and was found dead by the roadside. His body was swollen, resembling a drowned corpse. Of course, Hokusai wasn't the only artist who enjoyed painting yokai. Contemporary to Hokusai, there was also Kuniyoshi, who had his own unique style. One of his works includes the story of Umibozu, a giant ghostly figure that would appear before sailors in the middle of a typhoon. After Hokusai's death, Japan began opening its borders to the outside world. Hokusai's beautiful woodblock prints reached a wider audience. For example, The Great Wave became one of the most widely reproduced works of art in history. The introduction of Western art also brought other changes. Traditional Japanese manga, pioneered by Hokusai, evolved with the influence of American comic books, creating manga as we know it today. Even in its animated form, Western styles blended with traditional Japanese tastes, slowly developing into the anime we are familiar with now. Of Japanese supernatural beings is not exclusively comprised of yokai. A subset of these entities are believed to be vengeful spirits of individuals who have experienced unjust or tragic circumstances. Anthropological investigations have linked one such spirit to a historical event dating back to the 17th century Edo period. Local Japanese believe the body is buried in a temple at Miyogyoji in Sugamo, Tokyo, and records indicate the death occurred on February 22, 1636. Onryo are vengeful spirits that can harm people in the living world. These spirits are often women who were wronged during their lives and seek revenge in death. They are described as very angry and cruel and can cause natural disasters to get back at their enemies. While we don't know for sure where Onryo came from, people have believed in them since the 8th century. They thought that powerful and angry souls of dead people could hurt or even kill the living. One of the first stories about Onryo is about Prince Nagaya, who died in 729. There's also a story in a book called Shoku Nihongi from 797 about a man named Fujiwara Hirotsugu, whose spirit harmed another man named Genbo. In Japan, there are 3 very powerful and famous Onryo named Emperor Sutoku, Taira no Masakado, and Sugawara no Michizane. After they died, people believed their angry spirits caused many bad things to happen, like people dying and natural disasters. To make the spirits happy, people built shrines to worship them. People in Japan still respect Onryo today. There is a special place called Masakado-zuka, where Taira no Masakado is buried. People have tried to move it many times, but every time they do, something bad happens, so they have left it where it is. The word Goryo is another word for Onryo, but Goryo usually refers to the spirits of noble people who died unfairly. People believe that Goryo can cause problems, and that we should worship them to make them happy. In Japanese beliefs, Onryo can happen when a person has too much hate or anger inside. This can make their spirit leave their body and become an Onryo. People also believe that Onryo can happen to people who died too young. People thought that Onryo could cause bad things like people dying in natural disasters. For example, a man named Hirotsugu was angry and his spirit was blamed for killing someone. A prince named Sawara was also angry, and his spirit was blamed for causing a lot of problems for the emperor. The emperor tried to stop Sawara's spirit from causing trouble by doing special rituals and giving Sawara a special title. He also moved to a new place to get away from the spirit. Another example is Sugawara no Michizane. He was a good person who was treated badly. After he died, people believed his spirit caused bad things to happen. To make the spirit happy, people built shrines to worship him. Oiwa, a well-known vengeful spirit or Onryo, is the central character in the Japanese ghost story Yotsuya Kaidan. Her story is inspired by real events and has been adapted countless times into various forms of entertainment, such as kabuki plays, theater, and film. As a result, there are numerous versions of Oiwa's tale, each with its own unique elements. What kind of horrors does her tale unfold? Oiwa was a beautiful and kind woman who married a samurai named Tamiya Ieamon. At first, they were very happy together. However, another woman named Ume was also in love with Ieamon. Ume was so jealous and angry that Ieamon married Oiwa, so she came up with a wicked plan. Secretly, she gave Oiwa a special cream and told her it would make her even more beautiful. Trusting Ume, Oiwa used the cream, but the cream was actually poison. It ruined Oiwa's face. One of her eyes was almost gone, and she lost all her hair. Instead of feeling pity or sympathy, Ieamon felt disgusted by his wife's condition. He wished for Oiwa to die soon. He sent his friend Takuetsu to kill Oiwa, but Takuetsu was unable to do so. In the end, Oiwa chose to end her own life with the sword. After Oiwa's death, Ume finally married Ieamon. On their wedding day, Ume wore a traditional face veil, as is customary for brides. When Ieamon lifted the veil, he was greatly startled. He saw Oiwa's horrifying visage. As a trained Ronin, Ieamon instinctively drew his sword and attacked. However, to his further shock, the head that rolled on the floor was Ume's. He had inadvertently killed his new wife. Overwhelmed by frustration, Ieamon was haunted by Oiwa from that day forward. Nearing madness, he retreated to a secluded mountain retreat. Unfortunately, his psychological condition deteriorated, blurring the lines between dreams and reality. The terrifying ghost of Oiwa was ever present. Moved by pity for Iman's endless suffering, an acquaintance named Sato Yamoshichi ultimately decided to end his life. After Iman's death, Oiwa's spirit remained restless. She became a vengeful ghost, haunting many, particularly Iman's relatives who had supported his marriage to Uma. With her disfigured and ruined face, Oiwa instilled fear wherever she appeared, causing accidents and fatalities. To appease her spirit, the Tamiya family constructed a shrine dedicated to Inari, the Shinto deity of prosperity and success. This shrine was named Oiwa Inari Tamiya Jinja. Some believe this old shrine to be one of the most haunted places in Tokyo, and it has even become a part of ghost tours. Many visitors come to pray to Oiwa, but they are often unaware that Oiwa's remains are not interred at the shrine, but rather at Myogyoji in Sugamo, Tokyo. Jorogumo is a terrifying yokai from Japanese folklore, a spider-like creature with the uncanny ability to transform into a breathtakingly beautiful woman. As a yokai, the Jorogumo has been haunting Japanese tales since the Edo period. But what exactly is a yokai? Yokai are supernatural beings from Japanese horror legends, often categorized as obake or bakemono. Obake are things with extraordinary abilities or bizarre forms, while bakemono are shape-shifting ghosts, demons, or supernatural creatures that don't originate from the human realm. These monstrous entities often disguise themselves as humans, but with unnatural or grotesque features, like flat faces, no eyes, no nose, or gaping mouths. In countless legends, yokai possess supernatural powers that can harm or even kill humans. According to folklore, a monstrous Jorogumo claimed the Joran waterfall in Izu, Shizuoka Prefecture, as its domain. One day, a traveler from a distant land stopped by the waterfall to rest and drink. Unaware of the lurking danger, he approached the water only to find himself ensnared in a sticky spider's web. The Jorogumo's deadly trap. With all his might, he managed to break free, and in a fit of rage, he tied the web to a nearby tree, pulling it down with such force that it crashed into the water. The Jorogumo, infuriated by the destruction of its home, vowed to kill anyone who dared to approach the waterfall. From then on, the Joran waterfall became a place of death, countless lives claimed by the vengeful Jorogumo. One day, a handsome young man arrived to gather firewood. As he was chopping a tree, his axe slipped and plunged into the water. When he dived in to retrieve it, a stunningly beautiful woman emerged from the depths, holding his axe. She handed it to him with a seductive smile, whispering, "Never tell anyone what you've seen here." Overwhelmed by her beauty, the young man agreed, and they made love in a secluded spot. At first, he kept their affair with the Jorogumo, the ruler of the Joran waterfall, a closely guarded secret. But as time went on, he found it increasingly difficult to keep the truth hidden. During a drunken revelry with his friends, he couldn't resist sharing his tale. His friends, however, only laughed and dismissed his story as absurd. But upon returning home that night, he was found lifeless, never to wake again. A person with supernatural abilities claimed that his spirit had been taken by the Jorogumo to serve her as a slave in the depths of the Joran waterfall. The Jorogumo, enraged that her secret had been betrayed, had exacted her revenge. There are numerous variations of the tale, but all agree that the Jorogumo is a yokai that rules over waterfalls and can transform into a beautiful woman. In the modern era, the Jorogumo has been featured in novels, video games, and other engaging media, further solidifying its status as a prominent figure in Japanese horror folklore. Yokai are supernatural creatures in Japanese horror legends, often categorized as obake or bakemono. Obake means something with great ability or a strange shape. Bakemono refers to ghosts, demons, or supernatural beings that can temporarily change their form. Bakemono are different from spirits of the dead because they don't come from the human world. They often disguise themselves as humans, but in strange or terrifying forms, like having flat faces, no eyes, no nose, wide mouths, or other unusual features. In legends, yokai usually have supernatural powers that can harm or even kill humans. Famous yokai is called Yamamba, or Yamauba, also known as the Mountain Grandmother. She is depicted as a kind old woman who lives in the mountains. However, don't be fooled by her gentle appearance, as Yamamba is known to be dangerous and is often described as a cannibal. The origin of Yamamba isn't very clear, but stories about her have been around for a long time. Some legends link her to nature and the supernatural powers of the mountains. Physically, Yamamba is described as an old woman with long, messy white hair and a very wide mouth that stretches to her ears. Her body is thin with long arms and legs, and she wears ragged, dirty clothes. However, it's also said that she can change her shape at will. Sometimes she transforms into a beautiful woman and offers shelter to travelers who spend the night in the mountains. She provides food and drink, but after they fall asleep, she kills and eats them as fresh meat. This myth is believed to have come from the tradition of abandoning elderly women in the mountains and the folklore of Ubasateyama. Villagers say that people who get lost in the mountains often become her victims. Among them are traveling merchants who sell goods, riding oxen or horses, like wooden bucket sellers or household goods traders. One such story is found in the folk tale Ushikata Yamamba. Once a merchant was transporting his goods using an ox, which included salted salmon. While passing through a mountain road, the merchant was stopped by Yamamba. She threatened to kill him unless he gave her the fish. With one bite, she swallowed the fish whole. Eventually, she ate all the fish, and even the ox pulling the cart was devoured. The merchant managed to escape before Yamamba could eat him too. There are many versions of stories that describe Yamamba's cruelty. She is known for kidnapping children and eating people lost in the forest. Another well-known story comes from the Konjaku Monogatari. One morning, a Buddhist monk was found by villagers near the forest in a state of shock. He was exhausted and thirsty, muttering unclear words. After the villagers gave him water and he calmed down, they asked what had happened. The monk explained that he had been running non-stop all night from the forest. He had been caught in a snowstorm while climbing a mountain, but came across a small hut where a kind old woman lived. She offered him warmth by the fire and food to eat. After the monk accepted her offer, the old woman gave him a strange warning. Whatever happens, never look in the room at the back of the hut. Ignoring the warning out of curiosity, the monk peeked into the room. He was horrified to see it filled with corpses that looked like they had been eaten by a monster. Realizing the old woman was actually Yamamba, the monk fled from the hut in terror, knowing he could have been her next victim. In another story, Yamamba punishes a miserly and arrogant man. In the tale of Kawazu Nyobo, a wealthy man known for his stinginess wanted a wife who worked hard but ate very little to conserve his wealth. He married a beautiful woman who seemed to meet his expectations. However, his rice supplies mysteriously diminished despite her small appetite. Curious, he secretly followed her one night and was shocked to see her transform into the monstrous Yamamba. Hidden beneath her long hair was a second mouth at the nape of her neck. In another tale, Yamamba eats a widow and prepares to devour her 3 children. After eating the mother, Yamamba disguised herself as the woman, planning to feast on her children. However, the 2 older siblings saw what had happened and escaped by climbing a tree. From there, they prayed to the heavens for help, and a golden rope descended to rescue them. Although she is a terrifying figure, Yamamba has also been an inspiration in various works of Japanese popular culture. She often appears in manga, anime, and video games, though her appearance and character are usually changed to fit the story. Unlike the frightening tales previously mentioned, in some regions, Yamamba is actually seen as a benevolent spirit. In the mountainous areas of Tokaido, Shikoku, and southern Kyushu, the locals also know of a figure called Yamajiji, or the mountain grandfather. Yamajiji lives alongside Yamamba and childlike yokai called Yamawaro or Yamawarawa. In Iwata, Shizuoka Prefecture, Yamababa is depicted as a gentle woman wearing clothes made from tree bark. She is known to borrow a pot from villagers to cook rice. Though she only uses 2 scoops of rice, the pot becomes full once it's cooked. On Hachijojima Island, there is a yokai known as Teji or Tenji, a large, tall woman who kidnaps people and hides them from sight. However, once she becomes familiar with the villagers, she helps by bringing grass to feed their horses and is generally kind-hearted. If a child gets lost, Teji will take care of them for 3 days. In the legend of Ubakawa, the Yamamba is portrayed as a figure who brings good fortune to people. In Kochi Prefecture, some locals even revere Yamamba as a protective goddess of their homes. According to legend, any house that Yamamba passes by will instantly become wealthy. In Japan, ghost stories are not limited to legends or folklore. They also stem from real experiences shared by many people. Some of these tales have become part of local history and capture attention because they occurred in real life. Here are several cases of Japanese ghosts based on true stories that continue to haunt the imagination to this day. Mansion, located on the outskirts of Tokyo, Japan, has become one of the most haunted and well-known locations among ghost hunters and mystery enthusiasts. This chilling tale originates from an ancient legend involving dark rituals and tragic deaths. Himuro is not just an abandoned house, it holds a dark history linked to ancient Shinto practices that led to sorrowful deaths. According to legend, the Himuro family was part of a sect that performed ancient Shinto rituals to pacify evil spirits. One of their main rituals was known as the strangling ritual, where a young girl was chosen as a sacrifice. A rope was tied around her body and pulled in 4 different directions, resulting in a horrific death. The rope was then used to seal the evil powers within the house. However, one time the ritual failed when one of the sacrificial girls fell in love and attempted to escape. This failure is believed to have caused a curse, leading to the brutal murder of the entire Himuro family, leaving a trail of blood and suffering within the house. Since that tragedy, Himuro Mansion has reportedly been haunted by the spirits of the victims who died during the ritual. Many claim to have seen blood dripping from the walls, heard mysterious voices, and witnessed shadowy figures moving without form. Some witnesses have also reported hearing the screams of women, echoing the suffering of the victims trapped between the realms of the living and the dead. Those brave enough to enter this house often feel as if they are being followed by unseen forces. The atmosphere inside is heavy and frightening, as if something is watching every step. The terror of Himuro House is not just an urban legend. It has also inspired the popular horror game Fatal Frame, which incorporates elements of the Himuro story into its narrative. In the game, players must use a camera to capture evil spirits and unravel the dark mysteries surrounding the rituals and curses within the house. Himuro Mansion has become a symbol of ghost stories that blend brutality, tragedy, and paranormal phenomena. Although there is no concrete evidence of the house's existence in the real world, its story continues to haunt the imagination of many. Regardless of the truth behind this legend, Himuro Mansion remains one of Japan's most famous horror tales, reminding us of the dangers of uncontrolled dark powers. During World War II, Okinawa was one of the largest battlefields between Japan and the Allied forces. The Battle of Okinawa, which took place from March to June 1945, was one of the bloodiest conflicts of the war, resulting in the deaths of thousands of soldiers and civilians. The brutal conditions of the battle left a deep mark on the island, and many believe that the spirits of the fallen soldiers still roam the area. Here are some commonly reported paranormal phenomena. 1. Many people report seeing the ghosts of soldiers around former battlefields or military facilities. Witnesses have described shadows of soldiers in World War II uniforms, complete with gear that vanish when approached. 2. At certain locations, especially near historic battle sites, visitors often hear unexplained noises such as gunshots, shouts, or cries in the middle of the night. These sounds frequently occur without any real military activity, adding to the eerie atmosphere. 3. Some visitors to historical sites in Okinawa report sudden drops in temperature, often feeling a sharp chill in specific areas. This phenomenon is often linked to the presence of soldiers' spirits who are still connected to the places where they died. 4. Locals and visitors in Okinawa at night often experience strange sensations, like feeling watched or touched by something invisible. Some have also reported seeing lights or torches appear and disappear on their own, adding to the mystical aura of the area. Haunted places in Okinawa include Kadena Air Base and Shuri Castle, both of which have significant military histories. Kadena Air Base, the largest airbase in Japan, is often reported to have extreme paranormal activity, while Shuri Castle was the site where many Japanese soldiers lost their lives during the war.